All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. So, thank you all for joining us. Our session today is worksheets again, adding rigor to PDF instruction. So, we're here from Text Help to share with you how you can make the best use of Orbit Note with your PDF instruction. And we have presenters today. We have the wonderful Eric Kurtz, who is going to talk to us about tech integration and really, some ideas for making the most and being ready to use new technology and make the most of it. And Kathleen Colburn, who is our senior product manager for Text Help, and she probably knows more about Orbit Note than anybody. She's been very, very hands-on with it. So we'll be having a bit of an overview of that. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Nora Trent-Acosta. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Text Help. That means if you're touching the Pacific, I've probably been to visit you or somebody near you. Greg, you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg. I am the Territory Sales Director for Southern California. And so I work directly with schools and districts in Southern California all the way up to San Luis Obispo. Very excited for everyone to join us today. Happy to be here.
And Corey Brooks is our Northern California Territory Director. So I know some of you have met her already. She's relatively new to the team. And then you folks that have worked with us for a while also know Greg Brandon, who is our Customer Success Manager out of our Boston office. So with that, just a quick peek at our agenda. So kind of getting to know each other here. Eric is going to talk about his big blank wall. And then Kathleen is going to give us an overview of Orbit Note and a demonstration. So you can see there's been all kinds of new things. It's constantly growing and changing. I'm going to talk a little bit about just injecting rigor into instruction using PDFs. And then we'll have additional time for question and answer and a sort of a wrap up at the end. So we're going to launch a little poll here. If you guys can just tell us a little bit about yourself so we can plan our time together. So just let us know who you are and what you do. Are you a teacher? Do you work in the district office? Are you ELD? Are you special ed? And that'll kind of help us to plan our time together. Okay, looks like we got a couple more people weighing in here, and it looks like we've got a lot of special ed people on this call, which is great. So we'll make sure that we talk about, accommodations and things that are going to be particularly helpful to special ed students there. So thank you for telling us these things. We appreciate it. And with that, we are going to switch to Eric Kurtz, and he is going to share more with us about his big blank wall. Thanks, Eric.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be with you guys here tonight. Let me start by getting my screen shared here, and I'll get some confirmation. Is that looking okay? Big blank wall slideshow showing up there. Awesome. That's the danger when you've got 3 monitors. You're never sure what you're showing, folks. And so you always just want to double check. All right. Well, hey, guys, thank you so very much for being here tonight. Hi, my name is Eric Kurtz. Quick little introduction for you. I am an educator in Northeast Ohio. This is my 30th year in education. I started off as a middle school math teacher, taught middle school math for 7 years, and then moved into a role as a tech coach or a tech integration specialist, and I've been doing that ever since. I currently work for a regional service center here in Northeast Ohio, supporting about 35 school districts on creative ways to use technology in their classroom and in their curriculum. That's my day job, and then on the side I am a Google certified trainer, and I run the website controlaltachieve.com. That is my blog, and I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't seen it before, or if it's been a while since you've been there. This is where I share all of my ed tech resources, projects, training videos, templates, updates, all kinds of great stuff there. So controlaltachieve.com. Certainly feel free to check that out. Tonight, though, we're going to be introducing things, kicking things off here with a little short session here on the big blank wall, and with the subtitle of Embracing EdTech Change. And oh my goodness, over the last year and a half, haven't we all had to do that? So let's go ahead and jump right into this. And to do so, we're going to actually be going back in time a little bit. We're going to head back to 1992. Now, for those of you that are quick with math, and if you caught that I said I'm entering into my 30th year in education, you can probably guess that 1992 is significant because that was the first year I started teaching. And there we go. There is my staff picture from my first year as a teacher. I don't think I've changed all that much. I think it is still the same quantity of hair. It's just moved from the top of my head to my chin. Nevertheless, that's when I kicked things off as an educator, and this was my classroom. This was where I began teaching at North Canton Middle School on the 3rd floor, room 301. That building's not even there anymore. It got torn down years ago. There's a soccer field there now, and probably was a good idea that it got torn down because it was the oldest building in the district. When I started teaching, I was very happy to have a job, but oh my goodness, it was not a very nice room. We had no air conditioning, very little electricity. The outlet you see in the picture here was one of 2 outlets in the entire room. So you barely could plug anything in. The floor squeaked terribly, but one of the weirdest things about my classroom was how tall the ceilings were. So you look at this picture here and you see these lockers in the back of the room. And those are not like little mini lockers. Those are regular full-size human lockers. You know, we just had these massively tall ceilings. And so I had a big blank wall in my classroom when I started teaching. Now, not that that's a massive deal, but I felt it was kind of, I don't know, it wasn't that attractive. It wasn't that engaging. It kind of made my room feel institutional. I mean, I wanted my classroom to be bright and colorful and engaging. And here I am with this giant, big blank wall in the back of my classroom. And I wasn't rolling in the big teacher bucks just yet. So, I didn't quite know how am I going to afford to change this wall into something that looks a little bit more engaging and inviting for my students. Well, for those of you that maybe were not teaching back in 1992, or maybe even weren't alive in 1992, I guess that's possible. Back then, we used to have these things called video rental stores. And you could go in there, rent an actual VHS tape, take it home to your VCR, watch a movie, be kind, rewind, all that kind of good stuff. Well, something neat about these video rental stores was they had movie posters. As they would get new movies in, they'd get posters to go with them, and they would decorate the store with these posters. And of course, they'd get new movies all the time, so they'd be cycling through these posters. And I thought, how about this? So I went in and I said, what do you guys do with your old posters? And they said, we just throw them away. And I go, could I have them? And I explained what I wanted to do, and they took pity on this poor young math teacher. And so, once a month or so, I'd go in and they'd have a box just full of old movie posters that had been cycled out. And I'd look through to find, school-friendly posters. And I would go and hang them up on that wall. I'd climb up on top of the lockers and I'd stick them up on the wall. And it was a wonderful solution for my problem because it covered this giant big blank wall. It made my room colorful and exciting and engaging. It allowed me to share something I was excited and passionate about. I love this movie, or I'm excited about this. And the kids too, students would come to me like, I just saw that, or I want to see that. And of course, because I was getting new posters every month, I would then give away these posters to my students as I got new ones. And so I would do a math problem of the week. And if they filled that out, they went into a drawing, and I would draw from that, and whoever got drawn could pick a poster. And it was just a win-win-win situation. Of course, it was free on top of all of that. And that is how I took care of that need that I had. That's how I ran my classroom for about 3 years. Well, after about 3 years of teaching in that building, we found out good news, they were going to move us to a newer building. We used to have 2 high schools, a North and South campus, and they were building onto the North campus to make it one giant high school, and they were going to give us what had been the South Campus High School, which was a much newer building than we were in. So after 3 years in the old building, I headed over to the new one and went to check out my classroom, and it was really nice. Bright, air conditioning, lots of outlets. I had one wall was windows looking out onto a courtyard. Another wall was whiteboards, and then the wall behind me was also whiteboards, and the wall on the other side was chalkboards, and it was just perfect, wonderful classroom. But I bet you can guess the one thing that classroom didn't have. It didn't have tall ceilings. It had normal ceilings. And so I remember standing, I mean, as like it was yesterday, I can still picture standing in my classroom and my heart just sunk. I was like, oh my gosh, where am I going to put my movie posters? And I remember just getting so frustrated, going, oh no, there's nowhere to put my posters. And I'm thinking, well, I guess maybe I could give up a whole section of whiteboards. You know, I could just put them on the whiteboards, but I need those for the students to go up and do their work. Or maybe I could turn them sideways, and that looks weird. And I guarantee at some point I was looking at the ceiling, like, could I hang these from the ceiling? You know, I'm sure the fire marshal would not have approved of that. But I truly remember just being standing in this wonderful new classroom, but being frustrated, being angry, being just so upset about not knowing where I was going to put my movie posters. And then it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I thinking? The only reason that I had these movie posters was to cover up a big blank wall that I don't have anymore. I don't have a big blank wall in this classroom, but I was so used to doing things a certain way. And we do that as educators, and I get it. You find something that works and you stick with it. This is how I do things. This is how I run my classroom. This is how I do extra credit. This is how I make the classroom exciting. This is how I do things. And I was so stuck in that rut, I couldn't see another way of doing it. And I realized, it took a little bit, but I realized that I was getting confused. I was confusing purpose and process, which is something we all do. It happens to all of us. Process is what we do, and purpose is why we do it. In my case, I had a process. I had a way of doing things. I hung up movie posters in my classroom. That's the way Mr. Kurtz did his class. But I had to think, well, why am I doing it? What's the purpose behind that? And for me, it was to create an engaging classroom. And I realized I had to change. I had to find a new process to fulfill the same purpose. I had to find new ways to make my classroom exciting and engaging. And you know what? I did. I grew, I evolved, I changed. I found new ways to make the classroom exciting and engaging. And that was good. Having said that, though, that experience never left me. And so I taught for 4 more years in math. And then, like I said, after 7 years in the math classroom, I moved into a role as a tech integrationist. And in doing so, I thought, if I could do this with movie posters, if I could get stuck in a rut, if I could be so focused on my process that I lose sight of my purpose with movie posters, could we do it with other things as well? And the short answer is yes, we can. And we do it a lot of times with technology as well. And so what I want to talk about here tonight for just a few minutes before we get into the meat of the rest of the presentation here this evening, I want to look at 3 examples of processes that maybe sometimes we hold on to a little too tightly. And we need to rethink, and we need to remember, well, what's the purpose? Why are we doing these things? And I tried to pick 3 processes that would align nicely with what we're going to be looking at here tonight with the Orbit Note tool that we're going to be chatting about here later. These, I'm also going to, of course, tie this into the fact that we're just coming out of a pandemic where we've had a similar situation to me with my movie posters. We've been forced into a change. We suddenly got a new classroom. Things didn't look the way they used to. Things changed a lot over the last year and a half. And so let's do that. Let's take a little bit of time here to take a look at 3 examples of things, of processes that we probably have used in education for a very, very long time. And it might be helpful for us to step back and rethink what's the purpose behind them, and are there other ways to achieve that purpose, and what did we do during the pandemic to do that? So first one we're going to take a look at here is a very obvious one with our topic here tonight, and that is printed worksheets, paper worksheets. Whatever, in this case, it's a math example here, but the idea, the process of using a printed paper worksheet for our students to fill out. That is as old as teaching. I've been in education for 30 years, and oh my goodness, worksheets have always been a part of the learning and teaching process. But what's the purpose behind it? Why do we use paper worksheets? Well, I guess you could say this a bunch of different ways. The words I've chosen to describe the purpose are to provide a guided learning and practice opportunity to our students. That's what we do a paper worksheet for. We want them to learn, we want them to practice, we want to give them some sort of a guided, organized learning and practice opportunity. Well, since using a paper worksheet is just a process, but the ultimate purpose is to provide our students with, practice and learning opportunities, the question is, how else could we do that instead of, and so when the pandemic hit and suddenly, hey, I can't give my students a piece of paper with, with the worksheet because they're not physically here in front of me. What other things did we do? What other ways did we find to accomplish this? Now, there's so many things that popped up over that time, tools like Kami and DocHub, TeacherMade, using Google Classroom and using the annotation tool in there. I've even saw people using Google Slides and taking a picture of a worksheet and putting it in a Google slideshow as a background and putting things on top of it. We did all kinds of stuff during the pandemic. Well, one tool we're going to be looking at here tonight, though, is OrbitNote. And this is a wonderful tool. I will not get into all the technical details of it. I'll just keep this kind of philosophical here, and I'll let that get covered more later. But it is a wonderful tool that provides annotation tools inside of PDFs. You can take anything that you've got and you can digitize it, pull it into OrbitNote, and be able to use tools like a highlighting tool and drawing shapes and using a pen to write on the PDF, typing in text, adding push pins that can expand out with more information. And the thing is, there's a lot of nice benefits that come from going digital. We, can take anything that we have physical, we can turn it digital, and we can access it on any device. We also don't have the physical limits of a piece of paper. Like I mentioned, those push pins, you can only fit in so much on a piece of paper, but those little push pins, maybe we'll see this later in the demos tonight, you can have those expand out and have more information crammed into a little space than you would be able to otherwise. And of course, with all the different colors for the highlighting and so forth. And of course, no worries about the dog eating your homework, right? So we don't have to worry about losing our papers. So that's one thing. Using physical printed paper worksheets, that's a process that is, as much a part of education as anything. And we've had to look and find other ways to accomplish that. That's one. Let's take a look at our second. The second process that we're going to talk about here is written feedback. Now, maybe it's the big red pen that we're all used to, taking a stack of papers and grabbing that red pen and writing feedback onto a student's document that they've turned in. But written feedback with a red marker, well, that's just a process. Why is it? What is the purpose behind that? Well, I'd say it's probably to communicate suggestions for improvement to our students, whether they're, it's something they've turned in and we're asking them to redo it, or we're giving feedback on a project they're still in the process of working on. The reason for written feedback is to communicate suggestions for improvement. Well, just like we asked before, suddenly we couldn't do that. Suddenly we didn't have our students there in front of us where we could just easily grab their papers and write notes on them and give them back to them. We had to find other ways to provide students with suggestions for improvement. There are so many things that popped up during the pandemic. We use tools like Mote to be able to record audio and put it into a document. We use just the regular old Google Docs, commenting feature. We use things like Screencastify to, record videos and put that into our students' work to give them feedback that way. Some folks use Google Keep as a great way to collect a bunch of canned comments that they could easily insert into a document. Or with Google Classroom, it has a comment bank of its own, and if you're using the mobile version of Classroom, you can use the annotation tools to mark up right on PDFs and documents and images. But again, what we're going to be looking at here tonight is the wonderful features that we have in OrbitNote. In that, there is a commenting feature built right into it, where you can select anything and you can, of course, put in text, but it doesn't have to be just text. You can also do voice notes. You can record your voice and put that right into the student's file. You can add images, you can add attachments, and all of this can happen during the learning process. That's one of the things, again, we talk about. There's benefits to making these pivots and going digital. We don't have to wait for a student to turn in their final product and then we mark it up and give it back to them. We can open it all throughout the learning process, and we can be leaving notes and feedback and having a two-way conversation with our students and providing rich feedback with images and attachments and more personalized voice notes. All right, last one. The final one, this is a really, really important process, and that is face-to-face intervention, where we work one-on-one or in a small group with our students who may be struggling, to give them additional assistance if they're having a difficult time. Now, that's important. That is absolutely wonderful. Anytime we can, and again, in no way am I saying that any of these processes need to be done away with. It's just sometimes we're not able to. Sometimes we aren't face-to-face with our students, or even if we are face-to-face with them, it's us and 30 students, and we can't give them the personalized attention we'd want to. Well, what's the purpose behind face-to-face intervention? Well, it's to support our struggling students. They're having a difficult time with the learning task, and we want to provide support to them. So how can we do that? If we can't be face-to-face with them at all, or again, it's class of 30 and we can't split ourselves among all those students and give them the support they need right at that particular moment. Well, all kinds of tools got used during the pandemic for this. It would be things like Microsoft's immersive reader tool, or extensions like Open Dyslexic to change the font on web pages to make them easier to read, or the built-in Docs voice typing tool for students to be able to speak and dictate right to their document, or Mercury Reader to clean up a web page and to remove any distracting elements from it, or extensions like Google Dictionary to double click on a word and get an immediate definition of it, or things like Quillbot that will take a large article and summarize it into a smaller blurb. And again, tonight we'll be looking at OrbitNote, which it's not just a tool to annotate on PDFs. It comes with the power of read and write built into it. All of these wonderful accessibility tools, things that will allow our students to just click on text and have it read aloud to them, or have the entire document read aloud to them. Or if they have words they get stuck on, being able to pop up a dictionary that defines words, or a picture dictionary to show them images of it, to grab a screenshot of something that maybe isn't selectable text and still have it read aloud, to translate words, to mask the screen so that you can just focus on the bright section that you drag up and down, or when you're typing in a comment, word prediction, talk to type, where you can speak and have it typed up, or the voice note feature where you can record your voice and put that in. And these are wonderful support tools for our students that even if they are face-to-face with us in the classroom, or if they're not, these are tools to support them when we can't give them that immediate support right at that moment. So anytime, anywhere, the students can get this additional help for them. Now, those are just 3 examples of processes. And yes, there are a lot of good things I talked about there, but it's scary. It's a challenge. Change is tough. We're not here tonight to say, hey, just roll with it. It's tough. We do have an understandable fear of change. We have a way of doing things in our classroom, and we've had to make a lot of changes over this last year and a half. But you know what, guys? Even if the pandemic had never happened, we still need to do this because the world is changing around us. We need to prepare our students for their future, not for our past. We all need to be poster children of change. We need to learn, we need to lead by example, show that we are lifelong learners for our students, because guys, this is not our classroom anymore. This is the classroom of the past, and it has changed and it will continue to change, and we need to prepare our students for their future. So as I wrap up my section here, I guess my question to you is, do you have some big blank walls? Are there things you've been hanging on to because this is the way you've always done it and you've got a comfort level and this is how it has worked for you? Well, I would encourage you to just take a deep breath and maybe let that go a little bit tonight and be open to, okay, what are some other options? Because folks, there are so many tools, and you're going to see some awesome ones tonight that are wonderful processes, and they're all there to ultimately help us fulfill our purpose, which is to help our students learn, grow, and succeed. So thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm excited to see all of the wonderful learning we have ahead of us here tonight. Thanks so much.
Eric, thank you so much. Greg, do we have any questions?
No questions right now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward with a quick poll. So we want to see which of these things do you want to do with your PDF-based instruction? So do you want to read text aloud, use a dictionary? Do you want to have students scribe their answers or respond to worksheets? Do you want to leave voice notes, attach documents and annotations? I think Eric spoke really eloquently about leaving that student feedback. I really like the way you kind of talked about that. And do you want to really move your students forward to some higher order thinking, some response, some collaboration? So we'll give you guys just a minute to kind of respond to that, and that'll kind of help guide our time together. I'm pleased that it looks like many of us are past the just sort of circling things on a sheet there. So that's awesome. If I've said it once since the beginning of COVID, I've said it 100 times since the beginning of COVID. If worksheets sort of, died in a fire because of COVID, that wouldn't be the worst thing that could happen. So we want to really help you to be able to really engage your students in meaningful ways with PDF instruction. So thank you so much. It's pretty evenly divided. That's awesome. Good for us to know. And so with that, I am going to introduce Kathleen Colburn. She's our product manager and the sort of guru of all things Orbit Note. So Kathleen, we'll make Kathleen the presenter.
All right.
And we will get to see some new and exciting things with Orbit Note.
All right. Can you see my title slide there? Okay, Nora?
We can, thanks.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me with you today. I'm really excited to show you some more details on Orbit Note. Eric queued things up really nicely there, kind of teasing a little bit of some of the powerful tools that Orbit Note has to offer. So I'm really excited to dig in a bit more today and actually show you the product. So my name's Kathleen, as Nora said. So I am our product manager at TextHelp. So I look over our Orbit Note product as well as Read and Write, which I'm sure many, if not all of you on the call are familiar with. And my role, I kind of like to think of myself as like a glorified middleman. I work with our software developers to make sure that the product does what you all, our users, need it to do for yourselves and for your students. So I like to have opportunities like this where I get to actually show things to teachers and to our users and get feedback. And then I use that to pass along to the guys who are actually building the tools to make sure that they work the way that you want them to work. So I'm really excited to be here. And today, we're obviously talking about worksheets. That's already been a very popular word that will continue to come up for the rest of our time together here today. But there's kind of not only just how do we make worksheets and how do we create them, but how do we make them be digital and collaborative and accessible and engaging? Those are kind of the four main things that I sort of like to come back to when I think about the different kind of strengths that Orbit Note has, and the ways that it can really transform, what Eric talked about, how it can really transform those processes that we maybe used to rely on or even still rely on, and really take things kind of beyond those processes to really serve these kind of four core purposes when it comes to why we use worksheets. And Orbit Note really accomplishes all four of those things. It allows teachers and students and users to create, convert, and connect, really taking their documents to the next level. Now, for those of you who may be familiar with Read and Write, particularly Read and Write for Google, you may remember back in the day, or I guess not even that long ago, we had our beloved Text Help PDF reader. And it was sort of a component of Read and Write for Google. So when you would use Read and Write, you can use the toolbar in Google Docs, and you can use it in Google Slides and on the web. And then that sort of fourth component was being able to use it in PDFs. But we actually found that a lot of our users who were, even power users of Read and Write for Google and were really proficient in, using those tools in lots of different environments, some of them didn't even know we had a PDF reader. They didn't know that if you, had a PDF in your Google Drive or were opening up a PDF from your learning management system or from Google Classroom, they didn't realize that you could use Read and Write's tools along with, a bunch of different annotation tools and really robust writing and markup tools, inside of those files. So we kind of thought to ourselves, I think it's time that we really allow our PDF solution to kind of stand on its own and have its own identity and not get kind of, lost in the shadow of everything else that Read and Write can do. So that's why this fall, we took the opportunity to kind of launch a brand new PDF solution, which is Orbit Note. So it's everything that you may, have loved and been familiar with our PDF reader, but now we're really going to be evolving and growing it into something even more. And what Orbit Note does, just kind of at a high level, and we'll certainly go into looking at these things in the live product in a moment here. But its really core features are, allowing you to have students to have their text read aloud. This is especially key, for those of us on the call who are, with a special ed focus, for students who may struggle with reading. Reading text, having the text read aloud to them is really core for their comprehension and their success and independence. Being able to create and share worksheets easily. This kind of comes back to that idea of, purpose and process, rather than, we used to maybe rely on just handing out a piece of paper to students in class and having them, bring them up front and drop them in a basket or collect them, when they're done. But Orbit Note provides a really easy way to do these things digitally. Being able to add all different types of elements to a worksheet to make it more than just like a static document, but really make it come alive and be engaging for all users, whether that be adding text or drawings or shapes or voice notes. We'll even look at using Equatio to add math and STEM content into a PDF worksheet. That's a really cool thing that I'm excited to go through today. And then, having the ability to collaborate and to leave feedback in a PDF. Going again back to that idea of no longer, doing the process of the red pen to do grading, but, to have kind of a more live and engaging way of communicating feedback and giving suggestions to students on their work. And then finally, Orbit Note includes all of those support tools that are so key for students who use Read and Write, whether it's reading or writing or comprehension or study or research supports. We'll take a look and see that, all of these tools that know that your students know from Read and Write, those are going to be available inside of PDFs with Orbit Note as well. So with that, and of course, we got a final bullet point there for digital math and STEM. So like I mentioned, being able to add math using the Equatio into a PDF worksheet. So with that, now let's pop out of these slides here and actually take a look at Orbit Note in action. And I'm going to turn my camera off here just so you're not staring at my side profile this whole time, but it's really the screen that you want to focus on anyway. Whoops, wait a second there. Nora, can you still see my slides?
Yes, I can see your slides.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, just clicked the wrong button. Okay, I think we are good to go now. So let's take a look at Orbit Note. So the easiest way to get started with Orbit Note, I've got it installed here from the Chrome store. You can see in my browser in the top right, I've got my Orbit Note extension icon. But the easiest way to get started is just to go to orbit.texthelp.com. And the first time that I go here, it signs me right in, but if it's your first time using the tool, it'll just have you sign in, grant a couple of standard kind of Google permissions, and then it'll take you to your Orbit Note dashboard. And this is a great place to kind of get started with using the tool. The way that Orbit Note works is it's going to allow me to use many different types of input or reading and writing tools inside of a PDF, but I need to have a PDF to get started. So if I've got a PDF saved on my computer, I can click on my File Explorer here, or I could just drag and drop a PDF in, or I can head to my Google Drive to open up a PDF. But the other really cool thing I can do is, if I actually go to my Google Drive, I'm going to right-click on a PDF, choose Open With, and I've got that option there now to open it in Orbit Note. Now, I also have my option to open it in Read and Write. Both of these are going to go to the exact same place. So whether you are more used to using Read and Write, or if you're just getting started with Orbit Note, no matter which of those you click on, it's going to take me into my PDF with Orbit Note. And I'm going to click on the Orbit Note option there. So here is my PDF that I have opened up that I want to work on. And we can see here at the top, I have my Orbit Note toolbar. So these are all of those different, interactive tools that I can use on this document. So left to right, well, we'll just kind of work our way down and we'll see what all these different supports are, how you can use them, with your students, how your students can use them, and what great ways that these tools can really bring this document to life and make it engaging and actionable. So the first thing that we'll look at actually is in the settings menu. I can even customize the look of this toolbar. So we have a couple of different theme options. I feel like having a dark theme is a very kind of trendy thing that a lot of tools and operating systems are doing these days. So I do kind of like that dark mode, but I'll keep it on light mode for now. So let's start on the far left of the toolbar here with our text-to-speech. So there are a couple different ways that I can read this PDF. With PDFs, a lot of times, if we kind of scroll down and take a look at this thing, a lot of times PDFs there's a lot more going on in them than just perhaps a simple Google Doc or a simple Word doc. This document has 2 columns for kind of the text, and then we've got, some captions for images. We have a graph down here. So if I were to just start at the top of this document and let it read, sometimes PDFs will read things not quite in the order that I would want to read them in. So I'm going to use this click to speak button, and that gives me the control over which parts of the documents are read. So I'm just going to click wherever I want to read.
In schools across the United States, physical.
So, it'll just start reading there. And we can see we have a nice, natural sounding voice. And we also have this dual color highlighting. So I'll let this play again so you can see that in action.
Education has been substantially reduced.
So we can see that the way this works is one color highlights the sentence, and then another color tracks along with the words as they're read. And this is really key, especially when it comes to reading comprehension. It's kind of similar to if you were reading a physical storybook or book to a child, you might point to each word as you're reading so they can sort of make that connection between what the word sounds like and what it looks like on the page or on the screen. So that can be really helpful for students, particularly if they need help focusing on the text that's being read, or it just helps with that comprehension. Now this voice, the speech is very customizable as well. So I can go into my settings menu and I go to my speech tab, and I have a nice list of voices here I can choose from. Now, this particular document is in English, but if I had a document that was in Spanish or French or another language, I could choose a corresponding voice from this list to be able to hear the document read in that language. I can also adjust the speed of the reading. So I might, if I'm someone who needs a little more time to comprehend, I might want to slow it down. If I'm trying to do more kind of speed reading, I can speed it up, and I can listen to what that voice is going to sound like by just clicking on the test voice button. So really easy for students to kind of take control of their experience here and make it work best for them. Now, moving along the toolbar here, let's take a look at some of the reading comprehension tools that Orbit Note offers. So these tools, as a read and write user, when you open up Orbit Note, you open a PDF in Orbit Note. As a read and write user, you're going to have access to all of these additional tools built into your toolbar. So those same comprehension and reading and writing supports that students might be using in other areas, like in Google Docs or in their learning management systems, they're going to have those in PDFs as well with Orbit Note. So for example, if I encounter a word in my text that I'm not familiar with, I can just click on a word, come up to my dictionary, and then that is going to give me one or more definitions for that word. Anytime I see the little triangle or play button in Read and Write or in Orbit Note, that means I can hear that text read aloud.
Adjective. To do with school. University for colleges.
So I can listen to the definition as many times as I'd like. I also have a picture dictionary. Picture dictionary is especially great for either younger learners or students who don't speak English as their first language. Sometimes it can be more helpful to see an image representation of a word. So I can click on the word budget, for example, come up to my picture dictionary, and then that's going to show me one or more just kind of simple images or symbols that represent that word. Now, these tools are also really great because I can actually just keep them open if I want to. And then as I'm reading, anytime I select a word in my text, both of those windows will automatically update. So they're kind of useful to just keep there for reference as you're working or as you're reading through a document. And then the last feature similar is the translator. So I have a single word translator tool here. So I can click on a word, and depending on my language setting, which I have currently set to Spanish, it's going to give me translations.
Escuela.
And again, any of those I can hear read aloud as well. So really great comprehension tools that are built right into the toolbar for students, no matter what type of documents or PDFs rather that they're working with. Now, one tool I really like that kind of puts all of those together is the vocabulary tool. This is a really great way for students to either kind of do independent vocabulary practice, or teachers can even create vocabulary lists for their students using this tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these highlighters up here on the toolbar, and I'm just going to select some individual vocabulary words. And let's say we'll do adjectives. So I'll do moderate. We've got academic. Of course, I had picked these out earlier, and now I'm trying to remember where in the document they are. Increasing. So yeah, we'll just do a few words. So these could either be, maybe these are words I want my students to have extra practice with, or as I'm working as a student, I might want to pick out words that I need more help with or that I'm not quite as confident about. And I'm going to use this vocab button up here on the toolbar. So once I've highlighted whatever words I want to use, I click on the vocab button. And what it's doing right now is it's automatically generating a document in my Google Drive. And usually it takes a minute, especially if I'm on a webinar. But what this is going to do is it will automatically have a document created. Give that another try. See if it wants to cooperate. Just a refresh. Well, I might be able to find one that I created earlier when I tested it. But what this does is it creates a vocabulary chart. There we go. So it creates a vocabulary chart in my Google Drive. And what it does is it grabs those individual words that I highlighted, It builds a chart with the dictionary definitions, the images from the picture dictionary, and then it even gives me an extra column that I could use for notes. And this is now a doc that's in my own personal Google Drive, so I can edit it, I can share it. Maybe I want to change this to say use in a sentence. I could even add another column and do translation, and then have students translate it into Spanish or translate into Spanish on my own. This is all now this is a document that I own and I can manipulate and use for whatever sort of learning purposes I want. And all I had to do was click on that vocab button with the words from my text. And it also gives me a link back to that original PDF, which will also come into play with another really awesome tool that I'll show in a minute here that also uses those highlighters. But that's our vocabulary tool on the Orbit Note toolbar. I skipped over our screenshot reader here. So the screenshot reader, generally with PDFs, we always want to make sure that a PDF that we're working with is readable or accessible. I'm able to grab the text in this document, which tells me that the document is readable, and I can use my Orbit Note or my read and write tools to interact with it. But not all PDFs are going to be created that way, or sometimes there may be images on a PDF that are just that. They're just an image. And when I try to actually grab that text, I'm not able to. So let's say we have this little caption down here with the gray background. If this were an image-based PDF, I have another sort of backup way that I could read this text really easily, and that's using the screenshot reader. The screenshot reader is great for those image-based PDFs. All I have to do is just drag a box around the text that I want to read. And then what it does is it does a process called optical character recognition, which is basically going to scan that text and take it, make it not be an image any longer, but actually parse it and find the letters and the words and the sentences so that then it can be read aloud. And now I can even, I can read this text over and over as much as I need to, but I even have a copy button here. So if I wanted to, I could copy this text out and maybe pull it into a Google Doc. So I could actually copy this in here. And now I have my text right inside a Google Doc. So that's a really easy way of making something like a PDF or an image, into something that's accessible and editable. And now the last tool here on this section of the toolbar is the screen masking. The screen masking is really good. There's a couple of kind of main use cases I can think of for this one. The screen masking tool, it's really good, especially for eye fatigue or for students with specific visual needs or visual impairments. Really, even if we think about all of us, how many hours a day we spend staring at the computer, especially when it was during times of doing remote learning or distance learning. So sometimes just giving that screen a little bit of a tint can help with that eye fatigue and that experience. Now this feature is also really customizable as well. So I can click on my settings here and I can change things like the color and the opacity and the reading height. Another way that this is really useful is to help with focus. So I could turn the background of this all the way up, or pretty close to all the way up. And now I could use this to kind of help me with my focus as I'm reading. So I can just highlight the specific parts that I want to focus on, move this along with my mouse as I'm reading through the document. I know I could probably use this when I'm reading a book, because I feel like sometimes I'm very tempted to look ahead for spoilers lower down on the page when I'm reading a good book. So this is a really useful tool for helping students focus in on particular parts of the page. And anytime I want to turn that off, I have my just handy little screen masking panel, and I can click that button again to turn the feature off. So let's move along to the next section of tools here on our toolbar. And let's look at another application of those highlighters. So I showed the use of the highlighters to build a vocabulary list, which was just by highlighting individual words. But I can also use these highlighters for a lot of different applications for note-taking or for research. So this, this document is something that looks kind of more like a textbook. PDFs are often a very popular format for textbooks or for, lengthier pieces of reading that students are having to do for, papers or for research projects. And so when it comes to digital textbooks, another really awesome thing to do with a digital textbook is, some sort of digital note-taking or digital research collection. And the highlighter tools are really good for that. So if I was reading along, anytime I encounter, key information in here, I can highlight that text and come over and click on a highlight color. Now, I might want to think about ways that I could encourage my students to use each of these colors. So maybe if they're doing research on a certain topic, each subtopic could be designated a different color. Maybe I do have them do one color for main ideas and another color for supporting details. There's lots of different really good applications for using those highlighters to encourage higher level thinking and organization. So once I have, let's say I finished reading this article and now I want to actually keep those key pieces of information. Now, luckily, the way that Orbit Note works, these annotations or these highlights rather save automatically inside of the PDF. So if I were to close this and then come back to read it later, all of my highlights will still be there. But what if I want to actually use them to start, outlining a paper or take notes on those important pieces of information? Well, for that, I'm going to use this collect button here. So when I click on this, it's going to allow me to choose which of the colors I want to include and how to sort them. So either by their position in the document or grouping the different colors together. Maybe I'll do the color one for this. And then what this does, and hopefully it'll be cooperative this time, this automatically creates a Google document similar to the vocab tool. So it's automatically extracted those highlights and pulled them into a new document for me. So now I have all of my key information. I even have a link back to that PDF. So when it comes time for me to make a bibliography, cite my sources, so I'm not plagiarizing any work, I have a link back to that document that can help me with citing that source and putting together that bibliography. And now again, the beauty of this is a Google Doc that's in my Google Drive. I should note, I'm showing this in the Google environment, but this works great with Microsoft and with OneDrive as well. So if I was a Microsoft user, I could collect these highlights and they would go into a Word doc in my OneDrive. Similarly, that vocab tool would build a vocabulary list in OneDrive. So keep that in mind that it's very platform agnostic in terms of offering that functionality across both places. But now I've got this document and I can start using it to build an outline or to start writing my paper. So that's another really, really good tool for students that again, we talk about kind of taking things beyond just a static document or a static piece of paper. This is a way to really bring a PDF to life and make it actionable and make it an opportunity for learning and for practice for students. So I'm going to switch gears here now and go into a different type of document. This is like an article, but let's look at something that actually looks a little bit more like a good old worksheet. So I'm going to open up this grammar worksheet here. And then we'll use this document to take a look at the next section of tools on the toolbar. And these are the tools where Orbit Note, I think, really now gets to shine. These are the tools that I can use to actually write on this PDF and complete an assignment. So this is a grammar worksheet with a couple of different sets of instructions here. So it wants me to draw a box around the subject of each sentence, underline or highlight the verb. So we're doing different parts of speech here, and then rewrite the sentence. So this is a perfect opportunity to use a few of my different types of tools that I have in Orbit Note. So let's start with the Shapes tool. In my Shapes tool, I've got circles, squares, and lines. I can adjust the thickness of that line. I can adjust the color or the fill color. So I want to make this have no fill here. And now let's draw a square. So I'm going to draw a box around the subject of this sentence to start out. And we'll do a couple more of these here. So that's how I can use my square tool. The next tool over here is the freehand draw. Now I am on my laptop with my monitor and my mouse and everything, so it's not really a touch screen kind of setup here. But if you're on a touch device like a touch Chromebook or a laptop, the freehand draw tool is especially useful in that situation. I'm going to change up my line color here. And now I'm going to underline or highlight the verb. So I'll go ahead and do that here. And maybe I want to switch to using the line tool here so that I get it a little bit more of a straight line. There we go. It's a little messy with my mouse there. And then the last thing that I need to do here is rewrite the sentence or mark it as correct. So I have two choices of tools for actually writing on top of this PDF. I'll start with the one that I'm not going to use for this worksheet, and then we'll do the second one here. So this tool is the pushpin tool. The pushpin tool is good for, I like to think of it as good for notes or little helpful hints or tips or text that you maybe kind of want to hide away. It's also good if you want to write a large amount of text that's not necessarily going to, fit nicely on the amount of space that you have. So to use my pushpin, I can click wherever I want to place it, and then I can type my note. So we'll just do this sentence here. But you could see how if I wanted to write like multiple lines of text here, maybe I want to use this, maybe I'm in a teacher role and I want to use this to leave some feedback or some additional instructions for my students. If I have a lot of text that I want to fill in here, watch what happens when I click away to save this. It just hides it right behind that little pushpin icon. And then if I were to share this document with others, they can click on the pushpin and see what it is that I've written there. Now we'll skip to the other, the text tool. This is the tool that I can use to just write that text right onto the PDF. So we'll use that tool for the next question here. So I'm just going to click where I want to place it. Now notice as well, I have my options to, I can change the text color. I can make the text larger or smaller. But look at these two buttons here. So I have, again, just like I have my read and write supports up here on my toolbar, I have some additional read and write tools available to me in annotations as well. So I have my word prediction here. So I can turn this on and it's going to give me word suggestions as I type. So if I'm someone who maybe struggles with typing,
Football.
I can use the prediction engine here. And also, you can kind of hear it talking there, but every time I hover over a word,
Team. Game.
it'll read that aloud. So that's really helpful for students who, maybe struggle with the mechanics of typing, or they just, kind of have trouble picking out the right words, or maybe students who struggle with spelling or with grammar. The prediction is going to kind of lead them in the direction of correctly spelled and grammatically correct words. So that's a really good writing support. And then the other tool that I have here is Talk and Type. So even better, if I don't necessarily want to be typing, or if, sometimes my thoughts get, it's tough to get them from my mind down through my fingers into the keyboard, I could just use my Talk and Type tool. Players run 5 miles a day, period. So I can use that to dictate my text, and it does some, kind of basic punctuation as well, like I was able to say period. So I can use that tool as well to put my answers in. And I can move this over here and click away, and then that saves my annotation. So those are some, really great tools for filling out this worksheet, for making it more engaging and giving me the ability to show my understanding and do my work with various supports and things that are going to help me do that. And the last thing that I'll show in this document as well is, Orbit Note is also collaborative. So if I were back in this article, let's say I'm working on a research project or something like that with multiple other students, we can collaborate in this document by using the comments tool. So actually, if I scroll down, I think I've got a comment in here already. Yeah, so you can see, similar to Google Docs and G Suite apps, you can make comments in those. So I can see that somebody has made a comment inside of this document asking, what I think about that stat. So this is a really great way to either collaborate, have students collaborate with each other, have teachers provide feedback to students, or students can provide their responses or communicate with their teachers that way. In the comments here, I can obviously, again, when I'm typing in a comment, I can use my word prediction or my talk and type tool. I can insert images or links. So if I have files in my Google Drive that are relevant to this project that we're working on, I can attach those in there for others to be able to access. And then lastly, I can add voice notes too. So I can leave up to a minute-long voice note of, my own voice, which is an even more, personal way to collaborate and to communicate with other users than just typing out text. So that's the comment feature as well. So I can use that again if I'm in a situation like this where I want to collaborate with other students, or if I'm in a situation like this where I'm grading a student's work and I want to give them more personalized feedback. So I want to tie everything together that I've just shown by actually going through, we kind of started looking at this document with the student, using the annotation tools and the highlighters and things to actually complete this work. But how do I get this assignment to my student? Well, there are a couple of really great ways with Orbit Note that you can do that. And the one I want to show you now is with Google Classroom. Google Classroom is, obviously a hugely popular tool. There are lots of other learning management systems out there, and I would love to have the time to go through all of them and talk about the ways that Read and Write and Orbit Note can work there. But that would be a very lengthy webinar. So for the purposes of today, I want to take you through how you can use Orbit Note to do a nice assignment workflow with Google Classroom. So I'm actually now signed in as a teacher. So I'm in Google Drive as a teacher. I have now opened up this worksheet that I want to assign my students, and I'll show you how I can do that. So because I am a teacher that uses Google Classroom, I have a Google Classroom button on the top, the right side of my toolbar there. So I could use this to go ahead and assign this worksheet. What it'll do is it'll automatically create a copy for each student so they get their own copy to do their own work. But before I want to do that, maybe I want to add some of my own personalized instructions. Maybe I want to scaffold this assignment a bit for my students. So I could add a voice note with my own personal touch to the instructions that are already included in this document. So I'm going to use the voice note tool, and let's see, we'll say, for number 1, use the shapes tool to draw the box. For number 2, you could either use the freehand draw or the highlighters. And for number 3, use the text tool. So maybe I want to give my students a little more guidance. I can click comment, and that's going to add that comment right into Orbit Note as a voice note. So now what I'm going to do to ensure that that voice note gets transferred over to each of my students when they open their copy of this assignment is I'm going to click this Share Annotations with Students button. And that basically just kind of burns the annotation into the document. Now it says my document's ready. So I'm going to go ahead and click that Classroom button and pull this over here. And now I'm going to go through my, traditional classroom prompts here. I'm going to give this a name. I want to make sure that under this setting here, I want to change this to make a copy for each student. And that's going to ensure that each student gets their own individual version rather than having 25, 30 people all annotating on top of the same PDF. And I'm going to hit Assign. So once that assignment goes through, now let's switch gears. Now I'm signed in, I've got my student hat on. Now I'm in Google Classroom as a student, and I can see that my teacher has posted a new assignment. Now, because I have Orbit Note installed, when I click on my PDF, that's going to automatically open up in Orbit Note. So now we're kind of back where I did things a little out of order. Now we're back where I was before, where I'm signed in as a student and I can actually start using my tools to annotate this worksheet. And notice I even have my teacher's voice note here. So before I get started, I can hit play for number 1, and I can listen to the sound of my own voice. I'll listen to the sound of my teacher's voice, giving me some additional instructions, and now I can go ahead and start this assignment. So we'll just kind of redo a couple things here. Add some text. I won't make you watch me show my grammar prowess here for the entire worksheet. We will just assume that I have finished that up. So the last step that I do is I click the turn in button here. And that is going to take me back to classroom for the final step of turning in my assignment. And now the last thing we will look at, I'm switching back and forth a lot in my roles here, but the last thing we'll do is now I'm going to go into classroom as a teacher. And I can see in my classroom here that my student has turned in that grammar worksheet. I'm going to click on it, and this opens up in the classroom grading window, and it opens up with Orbit Note inside, and I can see my students' annotations. I can even see my own voice note that I left here originally, but I can see all of the work that they've done to complete that assignment. And then I can even add, I can add my own feedback here. So whatever I want to write there. It's not very good feedback, but I can add my own input. So again, coming back to that idea of collaboration and communication and providing feedback to students in more engaging ways digitally. And then I can give them a grade and kind of go through the, the usual classroom experience of giving a grade and putting that into the grade book or returning the assignment if the student wants to keep working. So that's just a kind of quick look at how Orbit Note can be used with Classroom. I will say we have a very similar workflow with Schoology, and we work really nicely as well with the Google Assignments LTI. So if you're using that in Canvas or one of the other major learning management systems that's out there, if you're using the Google Assignments LTI, Orbit Note works great with that. And we also have some exciting things kind of on our own roadmap for how we integrate with Orbit Note and learning management systems. So definitely stay tuned for more information on that. Now, the last thing that I want to finish up with here is, we looked at a reading article, we looked at a grammar worksheet, but I can't finish off without showing a little bit of math and STEM content. So let's take a quick look as well at how I can use Orbit Note in conjunction with Equatio to actually do math and STEM input inside of a worksheet. So I'm going to go back in here and let's open up an exponents math worksheet here. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Equatio is our math and STEM editor. It's very similar to Read and Write in that it provides a bunch of different input tools that students can use to create digital and accessible math in different ways. So it's really all about kind of giving students that choice and making digital assignments more engaging and allowing them to communicate and express their understanding. So I opened this PDF up in Orbit Note, and I have my Equatio extension installed here. And when I click on that, I'm going to get my Equatio toolbar inside of Orbit Note. So now I can use these two tools in conjunction with each other to work on this math worksheet. So the first thing that I might want to do with Equatio is actually have some of this math read aloud. So just like I showed the screenshot reader and the text-to-speech tool in Orbit Note for reading, just regular text, I have a screenshot reader in Equatio that I can use for reading math. So I'm going to click on that screenshot reader icon. It's great. It's even the same one that we've got on Orbit Note, so it's easy to recognize. And I'm going to drag a box around the math that I want to have read aloud.
9 squared times open paren negative 1 close paren cubed.
So I can hear that math read aloud, which is really key for, for math comprehension and for students being able to kind of make sense of that equation and what it's asking for. Math literacy is really important, and being able to, not only solve an equation, but read it and understand what it's asking. And so using that text to speech is a really effective way of doing that. Now I could, play it back, but now I want to actually go ahead and solve this. So I'm going to open up, I didn't know that was clear. I'm going to open up my equation editor. I could just start right off the bat with typing what my response is, but I'm going to grab this one more time. Didn't mean for it to go away.
9 squared.
If I click on my 3-dot menu here, I've got a couple of different, or well, 3 different options for what I could actually do with that math. And this third one, edit with equatio, I'm going to click on that and it pulls that math right into my equation editor. So I took something that was just text on a PDF, I made it readable, and now I've made it editable. So now I can go ahead and solve this equation. So we're going to say 81. I can use my prediction in equatio to help me if I don't know how to create certain certain elements or certain operations. So if I don't know how to make the times symbol, I can just start typing the word times, and that math prediction kicks right in and suggests for me what I want to say there. -1 cubed, so we'll say -1. So I did my multi-line math there. Now I'm going to click Insert Math, and that inserts it as a little annotation right into Orbit Note. And I can make this a bit smaller if I want to. And I've even got a play button that's embedded in there, so I can listen to that math read aloud as well.
3 lines, line 1. 9 squared times open.
So I can play back my work to, make sure that I haven't made a mistake, or just to hear what that math sounds like. So that's how I could use the equation editor in here. Let's see if I scroll down and find another one. I can use the handwriting recognition. So if I'm on a touch device here, I'll just type random stuff here, but I can write with my handwriting recognition on the left side of that panel, and then watch it's converted automatically into typed nice math on the right-hand side. And again, I could insert that. That's not actually an answer to any of the questions on the sheet, but just for the purposes of our demonstration. And I have a speech input tool here too. So I could say, let's see, for number 5, 0 cubed equals 0. So I could use that to start to solve one of these problems as well. And again, I insert the math, it goes right into the worksheet. So, we don't even have time to scratch the surface of all of the amazing things that you can do with equatio, but I have a feeling one of the there'll be more time for Louie, who is our product manager for equatio, to spend in one of our subsequent webinars during this series. But all of those great things that you can do with equatio to create digital math and STEM content, that can all be done right inside of Orbit Note. And that's a really, really powerful way to make math worksheets digital, which is probably the toughest type of worksheet, or the toughest area of curriculum to make digital and engaging, is math and STEM content. And it's super easy with equatio and Orbit Note.
Kathleen,
So
we have a great question about Orbit Note and equatio. So we have a question. Do you have to have full or premium equatio for those features to be available, or are some free features available with equatio that can work with Orbit Note?
Great question. So with Orbit Note, whether you are with equatio, whether you are a free or premium equatio user, you can open up this equatio toolbar inside of Orbit Note and use it to insert math. So it really comes down to just what's free versus premium in equatio. So I know you can type any math in equatio, but you don't get the prediction with the free version. I believe some of the other, I'm not as up on my free versus premium on equatio side of things, but the bottom line is, yes, there are features that you can use to insert math with the free version of equatio into Orbit Note.
So just clarifying, if you have access to a free feature in Equatio and you have access to OrbitDoc, you'll be able to use that free Equatio feature inside OrbitDoc.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. That's great.
Well, I think, Nora, I think that wraps up my my demo piece here. So I don't know, do you want to take the presentation back, or are there other questions I can help answer?
Sure. Did we have any other questions? So, oh, another good question here. If we have a Read and Write subscription, do we automatically have OrbitNote?
Yes. So with Read and Write, it includes this. So this current version of OrbitNote, which is everything that was in the PDF reader previously, that is all included in your Read and Write subscription. Going forward, we're going to start adding some new features that will be a premium offering that you can tack on to your Read and Write subscription. But everything that's in there now is available as part of your existing Read and Write.
So everything that you know and love about PDF Reader is going to continue to be available to Read and Write users through OrbitNote.
Yep, that's right.
Sweet. Okay, that is great. I am going to go ahead and take back the presentation. And I have a couple of things that I wanted to share. Let's see here. So let's talk a little bit. I dropped something into the chat just a moment ago about Read and Write and your LMS. So Read and Write and OrbitNote support literacy in Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, Seesaw, and I dropped this link into the chat window, and that will take you to a little slideshow that will show you live videos. Thank you, Kathleen, of how all of these things work inside, and even how they work inside of Office 365. So just so you know, if you have questions about how that works, we're always here to help support you with those. Just wanted to make sure that you had that, since we're having a bunch of conversation here about learning management systems. We definitely want to be part of that workflow and make that conversation between teachers and students as effective as possible. One more little thing I wanted to share with all of you is this little document right here, and I'm going to go ahead and type this into the chat window so you guys can access that as well. Let's see. So this document this PDF Rigor document has some great suggestions for how to really step up your game, and very much in line with what Eric was talking about. How can we really think about the purpose of what we need to do for our students versus just the process? So, you know, when we're thinking about Rigor, are we just having students ink short phrases on PDFs, or are we having them answer in complete sentences? Are we having those things iterative? Are we actually having the students complete sentences and then go back and edit their writing, listen to it and make changes with it, right? Are we just, I hope in this day and age, we're not just having students, you know, circle the correct answer. Can they use the typing or the pushpin annotations to give a more fully realized answer, and maybe even share some of their reasoning about why they made the choice that they made? Of course, we want to have the text on the page read out loud, but I think it's very important to remember that for students to hear what they wrote read out loud really helps to cement that. In a way, it's kind of part of the publishing step in the writing process. But also, you know, a lot of our students with disabilities, if we have them just use their finger to scribe something on a page, it may not mean anything to them the next day, right? So thinking about, you know, drawing or typing on a PDF is a good thing, but is it a better thing to use word prediction or talk and type to give a more kind of fully realized expression there? And then I think a lot of people are familiar with highlighters, laying some color on a page, but we know if we don't give students something explicit to do with those colors, it turns into an art assignment, not higher order thinking, right? So we want to make sure that we give those students a reason to extract those highlights and use them in another way, so that they're synthesizing that information, putting that together and thinking about it. So I always say if you want to give standards-based instruction, go to the highlighters. Those highlighters could be used. We talked about main idea and detail. It could be compare and contrast. It could be character study. You could, go through a chapter of a book and have, the motivation behind one character in blue and the motivation behind another character in pink, and look at those. But don't rule out that kind of analysis for your younger students. There is no reason why your first graders can't highlight the short A words in blue and the short O words in yellow and pull those out. So instead of a more static spelling list that's all about memorization, they're really feeling and understanding how those words fit together and how they're different. And then also, just demonstrating their learning. We talked about creating that meaningful, like, classroom environment, engaging your students. So, keeping them attentive and engaged can be as simple as having the text read out loud, or using the screen masking to kind of draw attention to a specific place. But I think one of the things a lot of people found during remote instruction last year is those comments and those voice notes are huge in building that relationship and that real meaningful back and forth. And don't forget how easy it is to collaborate. So I wanted to make sure that you guys had that with some really examples of how you might take something that you're currently doing with PDF instruction and kind of take it up a notch to be a little bit more meaningful. Uh-huh.
And the PDF Rigor link is not a valid link. Can you re-drop that?
Yes, let me see. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this link in here. Maybe it'll be a little bit better for people.
Okay.
That one will be a little bit more useful to people. Let's do this. Let me drop this one in here so you guys can see that. So let me know if that works a little bit better.
Yes, that works. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So did we have any additional questions here? I'm going to go ahead and launch, or maybe Greg or Corey, one of you guys can launch our final poll, just how we can help. And while you're filling that out, we will just take a quick moment here. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. If you want to go ahead and close that poll. And I see another question here. If we have a read and write subscription, do we automatically have Orbit Note? And I'm really glad that you used the word automatic. It is automatic. So I'm going to just escape out of here to just make sure that you guys can see this. But you can see that I do have Orbit Note because I have the two little blue dots up here. So this purple puzzle piece tells me that I have read and write, and that's what I use inside of G Suite. So I have the Read Write for Google Chrome extension. This is our screenshot reader. You saw Kathleen use the screenshot reader. And this tells me that I have Orbit Note. So when we did the soft launch this summer of Orbit Note, we actually automatically converted your existing PDF reader. So you might have remembered there used to be a little gray square that said PDF on it in purple. That turned into this Orbit Note. So there was nothing that needed to be done by IT or the end user. It just converted to Orbit Note. So if it's been a while since you've opened a PDF, you may want to go ahead and try opening that with Orbit Note using the steps that Kathleen outlined to you. Remember, the first time you do it, you will have to accept some permissions, but it should be all ready to go for you if you're a longtime Read and Write user. It's just waiting for you. So good question. Any other questions? Okay, well, we want to thank you for joining us and spending a good part of your day with us. We did record this session, so we'll make sure that we reach out to you with that recording if you want to review it or you want to share it with some of your colleagues. And as always, we are more than happy to help in any way that we can. So please do reach out to your local text helper. We are always happy to hear from you. So thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a good evening.